Their contamination levels are lower than ours. You see very few chips and burrs, very few nicks, and significantly better micro finishes in both the functional and the non-functional areas of our product.
There was one particular part that we looked at, the valve body, and we were checking an inside diameter of a bore. I had a floor inspector making the checks, and as he went to the job and began to use the gauge, which is a very sensitive air electronic piece of equipment, he put the first offshore unit on, and as he gauged the part, it showed right on the low limit of the gauge. As he rotated the part to look for run out, he found none. After several more checks, he was getting the exact same reading on each part, so he stopped gauging and got his gauge masters out to verify that the gauge was working correctly. It was mastered correctly, so he resumed his checks again, and all 10 pieces checked in the exact same place with absolutely no run out and no variability, which just seemed amazing. He thought the gauge was broken and called in a request for a gauge repairman, who came out and verified that the gauge was indeed working and that the quality level of that part that was indicated in the checks was indeed true.
You try to determine what causes that consistency. So you take your competition's valve body apart and you measure some things. You measure the size of the bore and you record it. You measure the size of the valve and you record it. And you measure spring loads. You also measure microfinish. And on the 10 competitive units that we looked at, we discovered that our competition uses about 27% of the tolerance for all those components that I described: springs, bore, microfinish, size of the valve, and size of the bore. Now that piece-to-piece consistency allows that valve body to function more consistently when it gets in the test stand and when it gets in the customer's car. We did the same thing for Batavia. A wider spread indicated we had some things to do. It indicated to us that that on our valves we use 70% of the tolerance. Now that's significantly higher than I would have imagined. And the kind of processing equipment we have in Batavia would indicate that we could do much better, and are working on it and are getting better. And we're in the process now of going through a complete analysis of our grinding process and working with our spring suppliers so that we can get the kind of consistency that our competition has. Then once we achieve that consistency, we can manage our product. Our competition manages the product. We can manage our product to make bores on the high side, valves on the low side, have mean dimension on the springs, and we'll get as good a functioning main control in test and in what our customer sees as our competition does.
I guess the bottom line that we learned at Batavia is that meeting blueprint is not good enough.